When people talk about the technology giants that shaped the modern world, IBM is often treated as a prelude rather than a protagonist, a company that mattered once, before the era of personal computers, smartphones, and cloud platforms truly began. This view profoundly misunderstands IBM's role. IBM did not simply participate in the creation of the tech world, it architected the rules, norms, and institutional logic that still govern it today. Long before innovation was associated with disruption speed and startups, IBM demonstrated that technology could be standardized, trusted, scaled, and embedded into the very machinery of governments, corporations, and global commerce. To understand how the tech world works, you must understand IBM. IBM's influence begins not with computers, but with data. In the early 20th century, IBM was a company that helped organizations count, sort, and manage information at scale. Punch cards, tabulating machines, and standardized processes were its core products. This may sound mundane, but it was revolutionary. IBM taught the world that information could be systematized, that decisions could be supported by machines, and that scale required order. Before IBM, information was local and manual. After IBM, it became centralized, mechanized, and governable. This was the birth of modern enterprise thinking. The company's most consequential contribution was not a single invention, but a mindset reliability over novelty. IBM sold certainty in an uncertain world. Governments trusted IBM. Banks trusted IBM. Corporations trusted IBM. This trust was not accidental. IBM wrapped its technology in service training and long-term relationships. It did not just sell machines, it sold continuity. Once IBM entered an organization, it stayed there for decades. This model defined what enterprise technology would mean for generations: expensive, conservative, deeply integrated, and mission-critical. IBM's shaping power became unmistakable with the rise of mainframe computing. While others experimented with hardware, IBM standardized it. The System 360, launched in the 1960s, is one of the most important products in tech history, not because it was flashy, but because it unified an entire ecosystem. IBM promised customers that software written for one machine would run on future machines. This backward compatibility was radical. It locked customers in, yes, but it also unlocked progress. Organizations could invest in technology without fear of obsolescence. This single promise trained the world to expect stability from platforms, a concept that still underpins operating systems, cloud services, and enterprise software today. Culturally, IBM also shaped what a technology company was supposed to look like. The famous dark suits, white shirts, and corporate discipline were not aesthetic accidents. They were signals. IBM wanted to look like an institution, not an experiment. This posture reassured conservative buyers that computers were not toys or threats, but tools. IBM engineers were brilliant, but invisible. The brand was the hero. This approach contrasted sharply with later Silicon Valley mythology, but it was essential for early adoption. IBM normalized computing in environments that would have rejected anything that felt unstable or rebellious. IBM's influence extended into talent and research. The company invested heavily in fundamental science, creating one of the most productive corporate research labs in history. Nobel Prizes, foundational discoveries, and long-term research projects were not side effects. They were strategy. IBM understood that shaping the future required patience. This commitment trained generations of engineers and scientists who later spread IBM's standards and thinking throughout the industry. In this way, IBM shaped not just products, but people. Yet IBM's greatest shaping force may have been its relationship with power. IBM worked closely with governments, militaries, and global institutions. This proximity raised ethical questions, but it also entrenched IBM's role as infrastructure rather than consumer brand. IBM taught the world that technology could be invisible yet decisive, boring yet powerful. Modern cloud providers, enterprise software giants, and even financial systems follow this template. They do not seek love. They seek dependence. Ironically, the same strengths that allowed IBM to shape the tech world also made it vulnerable to later shifts. When computing moved from centralized institutions to individuals, IBM's instincts lagged. The personal computer era challenged everything IBM believed about control margins and customer relationships. IBM participated, but it did not dominate emotionally. Still, even in this transition, IBM's influence persisted. Open architectures, standards, and compatibility were IBM legacies embedded into the PC world, even as newer companies captured the spotlight. What emerges from IBM's history is a company that acted less like a disruptor and more like a constitutional author of technology. IBM wrote the early laws. Platforms should be stable, enterprise. Customers should be protected. Research should be institutionalized, and technology should integrate with existing power structures rather than overthrow them. Every major tech company today, whether it rebels against IBM's style or imitates it quietly, is responding to a world IBM helped define. And it is exactly here that the deeper question of how IBM shaped the tech world begins to surface. Because once a company has defined the rules of an industry so completely, its greatest challenge is not relevance, but reinvention, not innovation, but adaptation. And we are forced to ask how a company built to value stability above all else can survive in a technological era that now celebrates speed, flexibility, and constant change. And that unresolved tension is the unfinished thought we must now carry forward into the next part. And when this unresolved tension is carried into IBM's long reinvention, the company's true influence becomes clearer, because IBM did not try to outpace the new tech world on its own terms. It tried to reshape itself without abandoning the principles that once made it indispensable. This is a far harder task than disruption. Disruption rewards destruction. Reinvention demands continuity. As personal computers, startups, and consumer software captured imagination, IBM faced an identity crisis. The world no longer wanted a single centralized brain. It wanted distributed intelligence, cheaper hardware, and faster iteration. IBM could have attempted to compete head-on with younger, more agile companies by mimicking their culture. Instead, it chose a different path. It leaned into what it knew best: complexity scale and institutional trust. IBM accepted that it would never be loved the way Apple or Google were. Its ambition was to remain necessary. The divestment of IBM's PC business to Lenovo in 2005 symbolized this shift. To outsiders, it looked like retreat. Internally, it was clarity. IBM recognized that hardware was no longer the strategic center of gravity. Value was moving upward into services, software, and integration. Where others sold tools, IBM sold solutions. This move freed IBM from competing in a commoditized market and allowed it to refocus on its historical strength, helping large organizations manage complexity they could not solve alone. Consulting and services became IBM's new backbone. This was not glamorous, but it was powerful. Governments, banks, healthcare systems, and global enterprises were not looking for the fastest innovation. They were looking for reliability under regulation, scale under pressure, and continuity across decades. IBM positioned itself as the translator between cutting-edge technology and conservative institutions. Cloud computing, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and hybrid infrastructure were not marketed as revolutions, but as evolutions that could be absorbed without breaking what already worked. Watson exemplified both the promise and limits of this strategy. IBM presented Watson not as a consumer product, but as an assistive intelligence for medicine law and enterprise decision-making. The vision was consistent with IBM's DNA AI as augmentation, not replacement. While hype outpaced results in some areas, Watson revealed IBM's philosophical difference from Silicon Valley. Where others chased scale through mass adoption, IBM chased depth through specialization. Its AI did not need billions of users. It needed credibility with a few critical ones. This conservatism is often criticized as slowness, but it reflects IBM's understanding of its role. Systems that govern economies, healthcare, and national security cannot fail fast. They must fail rarely. IBM's clients do not tolerate beta versions. They tolerate caution. In a world obsessed with speed, IBM quietly defended a different value: trust as infrastructure. What is most striking in hindsight is how much of the modern tech world still operates on IBM's logic, even while claiming to reject it. Cloud providers promise backward compatibility. Enterprise software emphasizes long-term support. Service-level agreements guarantee uptime. Regulatory compliance shapes product design. These are IBM instincts embedded into new platforms. Even companies that brand themselves as disruptive eventually adopt IBM-like behaviors once they become infrastructure. Stability is not glamorous, but it is inevitable. IBM's greatest legacy, then, is not any specific technology, but the idea that technological power must be institutionalized to endure. Startups ignite change. Institutions sustain it. IBM taught the world how to turn innovation into something governments could rely on and corporations could plan around. That lesson remains relevant precisely because technology now underpins everything. In the end, IBM's story reminds us that shaping the tech world does not always mean dominating headlines. It can mean writing the grammar others unconsciously follow. IBM's influence persists in how platforms are built, how trust is sold, and how complexity is managed. The company may no longer define the future alone, but it helped define the conditions under which the future could be built at all. And that is the quiet truth of how IBM shaped the tech world, by teaching generations that technology is not just about what is possible, but about what is dependable. In an age that celebrates speed, IBM stands as a reminder that endurance is its own form of innovation, one that rarely trends, but always matters when systems must hold.